My name is Liam. Not that it means anything anymore, beyond a number in the federal prison system. I'm 37 years old. These 4 cold, concrete walls are my home, and likely will be for what's left of my life. I have 24 hours every day to reflect, to rewind the disgusting tape of my memories, of what I did. There's no forgiveness here, no salvation in the silence. There's only the stark truth of the monster I became, and the face of the woman I destroyed. The woman I once swore to protect with my life. For 2 years, 2 whole years, my wife, Chloe, thought she had the perfect marriage. She thought she had found her person, and I was the one who built that illusion. I was the architect of that lie, the director of that perfect play. I nurtured it, cultivated it, with loving gestures and words that felt so sincere. Sometimes I even believed them myself. I was everything she thought she wanted. An attentive husband, a successful software engineer working from home, someone who was always there to greet her after a long day of teaching. I cooked dinner, listened to her stories about her high school students, laughed at her jokes. I was a fortress of stability, a safe harbor. And every single night, without fail, I brought her vitamins with a glass of water. I would kiss her forehead gently and tell her, "I love you." I can still see my own smile as I'd say the words, a smile I'd practiced into a reflex. Gotta keep my baby healthy. That smile used to make her heart melt. Now the memory of it makes my stomach churn with self-loathing. She trusted me. God, she trusted me with everything she had. She gave me her heart, her life, her future. Chloe's trust was so pure and absolute that it became my most perfect weapon. And trust, as I bitterly learned, is the most dangerous thing you can give a devil in disguise. Because what was really inside those capsules, what was really happening in our home, in our bedroom, to her body while she was in a sleep she thought was peaceful, it shattered everything. It didn't just shatter our marriage. It destroyed a human being. It tainted every beautiful memory, turning every "I love you" into a venomous curse. It shattered the image of the man she married, the life she was living, and who she even was anymore. But before I get into that madness, before I tell you about the abyss I dug and pushed us both into, I need you to do something. If you're listening to this, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I'm not doing this for fame. I'm doing this because this story, this confession, needs to reach as many people as possible. Because if this evil could grow inside a normal man like me, a husband everyone loved, then it can exist anywhere. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I read every single one, and though I deserve no sympathy, knowing my confession is being heard helps me face the demon in myself each day. Trust me, you're going to want to hear the rest of this. You're going to want to know what I found, what I did, and how a man who loved his wife could commit such an unforgivable crime. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when things were still normal, or at least when I was still fighting the man I was becoming. Chloe and I were married for 3 years. We met at a tech conference. She was there with a few students for a STEM event, and I was presenting on cybersecurity. The irony is suffocating, isn't it? The man who claimed to protect systems for a living was the single greatest security threat in her life. But back then, I wasn't that monster yet. I was charming, intelligent, and kind. At least, I tried to be. We dated for a year before I proposed. The wedding was beautiful, small, and intimate. Her mum loved me. Her dad loved me. Everyone loved Liam. The first year of marriage was wonderful. We traveled, fixed up our house together, talked about having kids one day. I was happy, with a genuine happiness that now feels like a knife twisting in my gut. And then, about 7 months before everything fell apart, the shift began. It didn't start with an evil, premeditated plan. It started with failure. I lost a major client, a contract that made up nearly 60% of my income. The blow was paralyzing. I was a freelance engineer. Our stability rested on me. Suddenly, the future I promised Chloe, the house, the trips, the family, looked fragile. The shame ate me alive. I didn't tell her. I was too proud, too foolish. I couldn't stand the thought of seeing pity in her eyes. I had to fix it myself. In that desperation, I turned to the darkest corners of the internet. I was looking for quick ways to make money, and I stumbled into a world I never knew existed. A world of sick appetites, where men paid to intrude on the privacy of others. A disgusting thought entered my head, one I initially dismissed with self-disgust. But it lingered, a toxic seed, and my financial desperation watered it every day. I rationalized. It's just pictures. She'll never know. No one will ever touch her. It's temporary, just until I land a new client. I lied to myself, pathologically. That's when the vitamins came in. I built the perfect story. I told Chloe I'd been reading about health and wellness, about how important supplements were for people with stressful jobs like teaching. I bought empty gelatin capsules and a bottle that looked like it came from a health food store. I told her it was a special blend, vitamin D, B complex, magnesium, to help with sleep, stress, and energy. I was so enthusiastic, so caring. "Baby, you work so hard," I'd say. "You're always exhausted. Let me take care of you." And she let me. She let me take care of her. And that decision, that simple act of trust, became her worst nightmare, orchestrated by my own hands. That decision was the first brick on my road to hell. At first, things seemed alarmingly fine. I started with a very small dose of Rohypnol, a drug I'd researched extensively on depraved forums where men like me shared their tips. I crushed it into a powder and filled the empty capsules. The first night I gave it to Chloe, my hand trembled. My heart hammered against my ribs as she smiled, took the pill from my palm, and swallowed it without a hint of suspicion. "Thanks, honey," she said, and her voice felt like a sentence on my soul. I had to turn away so she wouldn't see the disgust on my own face. I told myself it was just a deeper sleep, that it was harmless, that she'd wake up feeling rested. And for the first few weeks, she did. She mentioned feeling better, sleeping more soundly. And I, in my cowardice, clung to that lie. It gave me permission to continue. While she slept, I began. It was just photos at first. I used my phone, taking pictures of her in the dim light of our bedroom. I told myself it was no different than watching her sleep every night. But that was another lie. I knew a line had been crossed. I posted them on a private forum under a fake identity, and the money started flowing into my crypto wallet. It was alarmingly easy. It was an addiction. It soothed my financial panic, but it was killing what was left of the man inside me. But then the cracks began to appear in the perfect facade I had built. Slowly, things started to change. I was the first to notice them, of course, because I was the cause. I started noticing the gaps in her memory. I would test it. I'd deliberately bring up conversations we never had. "Honey, remember you said we should renovate the guest room?" Or, "You mentioned you wanted to visit your sister next month." I would say these things and watch. I'd see her brow furrow, a flicker of confusion crossing her beautiful face. "Did I say that?" she'd ask, and I could see her uselessly searching her own mind. And I would laugh, a fake, reassuring laugh. "You must be working too hard again," I'd say, my voice dripping with false concern. "You need to relax more, get more sleep." Each time, one part of me felt a sick satisfaction that the plan was working, but another part screamed in silence. I was dismantling her mind. I was making her doubt her own reality, piece by piece. But the demon in me, the one fed by money and deceit, was winning. It wasn't just conversations. She started waking up exhausted, despite sleeping 9, sometimes 10 hours a night. I knew why. It was a side effect of the drug. Her sleep wasn't restorative. It was a chemically induced coma. She was a high school English teacher, a job that requires sharpness and energy. I was stealing that from her. I'd hear her say things like, "Liam, I was standing in front of my class today and my mind just went blank. I forgot what I was teaching." Hearing those words was a physical pain. I had turned the brilliant, vibrant woman I loved into someone who was struggling to do her job. One of her students asked her if she was okay. She told me about it, and I saw real fear in her eyes. She knew she wasn't okay, but she didn't know why. And I was the only person in the world with the answer. And I said nothing. Then came the pajamas. This is one of the memories that makes me despise myself the most. The requests from my clients were becoming more specific. They wanted different scenarios. So, I started changing her clothes while she was unconscious. She would go to bed in her favorite oversized t-shirt and wake up in a nightgown she barely remembered owning. The next morning, when she asked me about it, I would look at her like she was crazy. "Baby, you changed in the middle of the night," I'd say. "You were half asleep. You probably don't remember." And she would accept it. Because the alternative, that her husband was moving her inert body around like a doll, dressing her up to fulfill the sick fantasies of strangers, was simply unthinkable. The bruises started appearing about 2 months in. Small ones at first, on her upper arms, like fingerprints. I knew where they came from. They were from the nights I had to move her, to pose her for a requested shot. Sometimes I was too rough. I remember the morning she saw them while getting dressed for work. I watched her face drain of color in the bathroom mirror. That night, she asked me about them. Her voice tried to stay calm, but I saw her hands shaking. And I, the monster, put on my mask of concern. I acted worried, so worried. I suggested maybe she was bumping into things without realizing it, or maybe she was anemic and bruising easily. I even offered to take her to a doctor. I made the appointment myself. I drove her there, sat in the waiting room like the supportive husband, while on the inside, I was praying they wouldn't find anything. The doctor ran blood work. Everything came back normal. Of course it did. The well-intentioned doctor suggested that maybe she was stressed. Maybe she should consider anxiety medication. I seized on that idea immediately. I said it made perfect sense, that teaching was such a stressful job, and she was probably just running herself into the ground. The doctor wrote a prescription, and I filled it that same day. More pills, more things for her to swallow, to trust, to let into her body without question. But the thing is, Chloe never had anxiety. Not before all this started. She loved her job. She loved her life. The anxiety came later. After the memory gaps, after the exhaustion, after the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on what. I wasn't just drugging her. I was creating a fake illness to cover my crime. I was turning her into a patient so I could continue poisoning her, legitimately. It was a new layer of deception, a new level of cruelty, and I dove into it without hesitation. I had become her doctor, her disease, and her jailer, all at once. Her phone became another battleground for my manipulation. This was when I realized how far I drifted from the man I used to be. I was no longer just a desperate husband making a mistake. I was a calculated, invasive controller. Once Chloe was in her drug-induced sleep, I would take her phone. I knew her passcode, another innocent trust she had placed in me. I would go through her messages, her conversations with friends and family. At first, I told myself it was to make sure no one suspected anything. But soon, it became an act of possession. I was living a double life, and one of them was hers. I started sending texts that she would have no memory of. Nothing major, just short replies to friends, confirming plans, random messages to her sister. But I couldn't perfectly replicate her voice. Chloe was warm and effusive. She used a lot of emojis and exclamation points. My texts were curt, almost formal. Close, but not quite right. I remember her waking up one morning, looking at her phone with a frown. "That's weird," she said. "I don't remember replying to Sarah." I was ready for it. I'd chuckle. "You probably texted in your sleep again. Happens to me all the time." And again, she believed me. Why wouldn't she? I was her husband. I loved her. I had no reason to lie. At least, that's what she thought. With every lie I told, I laid another brick in the wall separating me from reality, from morality, from myself. I was living in a world of such elaborate deceit that I was starting to lose the line between truth and fiction myself. The real escalation began around the 4th month. That's when her best friend, Mia, called. Mia and Chloe had been friends since college. They were as close as sisters. Mia had a bullshit detector that was second to none. She called Chloe while she was at school, during her planning period. Chloe told me about the conversation that evening, and as she spoke, I felt a cold dread crawl up my spine. Mia had asked Chloe if she was okay. She said Chloe had seemed off the previous weekend when they'd hung out. "You seemed like you were on something," Mia had said. "Your eyes were glazed over, and you were moving and talking so slowly, like you were sedated." Mia's words were a dagger. I saw the horror in Chloe's eyes as she relayed them. She told Mia she wasn't on anything, except for the vitamins I gave her and the anxiety medication the doctor prescribed. But I could see, even as she said it to me, the seed of doubt had been planted. For the first time, my explanations might not be enough. That conversation with Mia stayed with her. I saw her start to pay more attention, to question things she had previously accepted without a thought. And that's when she noticed the locked drawer in my home office. My office had always been my private space. I'd used the excuse that I handled sensitive client information and needed privacy. She'd always respected that. But one afternoon, she came home early and came into my office to ask me something. The door was open, which was unusual, and I wasn't at my desk. I'd gone to the bathroom. And there, in the bottom drawer of my desk, she saw a padlock. A physical padlock on a drawer that had never been locked before in our entire marriage. I came back to find her staring at it. My heart stopped. I knew this was a critical moment. I had to play it perfectly. She asked me, her voice casual, "Hey, when did you start locking that drawer?" I barely looked up from my phone. I acted as if it was the most trivial question in the world. "Oh, that new client," I said, my voice breezy and unconcerned. "Super sensitive data. They required extra security measures." I smiled at her, a warm smile, and asked what she wanted for dinner. My performance worked, at least on the surface. But I knew that lock had become a symbol. It was physical proof that something was being hidden. I'd had to do it. That drawer held the external hard drives where I kept all the images and videos. I couldn't risk her stumbling upon them. The lock was a necessity, but it was also a mistake. It turned her vague suspicions into a concrete concern. Over the next few weeks, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. I could feel her eyes on me, not obviously, but always there. I became almost fanatical about her taking the vitamins. It was no longer a caring gesture, it was a command. If she forgot, or said she'd take them later, a panic would rise in my chest. I couldn't fully control my expression anymore. A flicker of worry, fear, or even anger would flash in my eyes. I know she saw it. I would push the pills toward her, joke about how forgetful she was being, and stand there until she took them. About 6 weeks before everything imploded, I made another stupid mistake. A mistake that sealed my fate. I had a phone call late at night after I thought she was deeply asleep. It was one of the clients wanting to arrange a live viewing via webcam. He was asking about Tuesday night. I stepped out into the hallway, thinking I was far enough away. I lowered my voice to a whisper. Tuesday night. Yeah, same price. She'll be completely out. Don't worry. I had no idea she was awake or semi-conscious. Her mind was foggy from the drug. Her body felt like lead. But she heard me. She heard those fragments. She heard her husband's voice discussing her being completely out with a stranger. The next morning, I knew nothing. I was the same loving husband, kissing her goodbye, telling her I loved her. I didn't know I had just handed her the final, horrifying piece of the puzzle. That phone call, whether she tried to convince herself it was a dream or not, planted a seed of doubt that could no longer be uprooted. She started testing me in small ways. She'd pretend to take the vitamins, hiding them under her tongue to spit out later. But I'd become paranoid. I started watching her more closely, making sure she swallowed. I'd even ask her to open her mouth afterward, like a child. Just making sure you're not forgetting, baby, I'd say with a fake laugh. But it didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like control, and we both knew it. Our home was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a prison, and I was the warden. And I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that my time was running out. The night everything changed, the night my world of lies began to fracture beyond repair, started like any other night for the past 7 months. It began with a ritual I had perfected into an automated play. At 10:30 p.m., on the dot, I walked into our bedroom, a glass of water in one hand, the 2 vitamin capsules in the other. I no longer felt guilt, or perhaps I had buried it so deep it was unrecognizable. In its place was a knot of tension, a constant state of alert. I had become a sentry, guarding my own crimes. I sat on the edge of the bed. Chloe looked at me, and for a split second, I thought I saw something different in her eyes. Not the usual warm trust, but a guarded emptiness, a well-hidden vigilance. But it was gone so fast I convinced myself I was imagining it. My own paranoia was painting ghosts. I held out the pills. She took them without a word. I watched her put them in her mouth, take a large sip of water. I waited, my eyes fixed on her, until I saw her swallow. "Sweet dreams, beautiful," I whispered, kissing her forehead. Her skin felt cool beneath my lips. I felt like an imposter, an actor playing the part of a loving husband. But I had been playing the role for so long. I left the room, closing the door behind me, and went downstairs to my office to continue my work, my real, nocturnal work. I didn't know that on this night, something was different. I learned later, in her testimony, that the pills tasted slightly off. Maybe I'd been careless, hadn't sealed the capsule tightly enough, and some of the bitter chemical powder had leaked out. That taste, that tiny deviation from the norm, was the final straw. It cut through the fog of her doubt and planted a seed of real, tangible fear. In that moment, as I thought she was drifting off to sleep, Chloe made a decision that saved her life and condemned mine. She decided to fight the drowsiness. She was going to stay awake. From my perspective downstairs, everything was business as usual. I was answering emails, arranging viewings for the coming week. I had become desensitized to it. The men I dealt with were faceless usernames and sick requests. They were just numbers on my balance sheet. I had completely compartmentalized Liam, the husband who loved Chloe, from Liam, the criminal who was selling her out. About 30 minutes later, I went upstairs to check on her. This was also part of the ritual. I opened the bedroom door softly. The room was dark and quiet. I could hear her deep, even breathing. I walked over to the bed and leaned over her, I could feel her warm breath on my face. Everything seemed normal. She was out cold. I was completely deceived by her performance. She was lying there, her heart pounding in her chest, her body screaming for sleep. But her will, fueled by fear and adrenaline, was keeping her conscious. She was playing dead, while every nerve in her body was on fire. Satisfied, I straightened up and left the room, closing the door softly behind me. I had no idea I had just been outplayed. I didn't know that in the darkness, my wife's eyes were cracked open, watching me. At 11:47 p.m., she remembered the exact time. It was seared into her memory like a brand. I went back into the room. This time, I wasn't there to check on her. This time, I was there to set up. I didn't turn on the light, moving in the familiar darkness of the room. Through slitted eyes, she watched me. She saw me pull a small webcam from my pocket, one I used to set up for the live viewing requests. I placed it on the bookshelf, aimed at the bed. She had to fight every instinct not to flinch, not to react, not to reveal that she was awake and witnessing this ultimate act of betrayal. After setting it up, I left again. The house was silent. For me, it was the silence of a normal work night. For her, it was the tense, charged silence before a storm. She lay there, listening, waiting. At 2:13 a.m., I made my move. But this time, I didn't go upstairs. I went downstairs. And she heard a distinctive sound, a sound that made her blood run cold. The creak of the basement door opening. We almost never used the basement. It was unfinished, mostly for storage. Nothing of interest down there, or so she thought. Why would I be going down there at 2 a.m? She waited. 5 of the longest minutes of her life. Then, with a courage I will never be able to comprehend, she forced herself out of bed. Her body felt heavy, her head spun from the residual effects of the drug, but she made herself move. She crept out of the room and down the hall, her bare feet silent on the carpet. As she got closer to the basement door, she heard it. The thing that confirmed her worst fears. Voices. Plural. I was talking to someone down there. She pressed her ear against the door, barely breathing, straining to hear. Should be good for another few hours. That was my voice. You're sure she won't wake up? An unfamiliar male voice, gruff and low. Never has before, I replied. Trust me, Mad, she's completely out. The dosage I'm giving her, she won't remember a thing. Even if she does somehow come to. And then I laughed. I actually laughed. That sound, my laugh, shattered her. She stumbled backward, her hand clamped over her mouth to keep from screaming. There was a stranger in our house. I had let a stranger into our home while I thought she was unconscious. And from the way we were talking, this wasn't the first time. She didn't call the police. She didn't run. The shock was too great. It paralyzed her. The man she loved, the man she trusted with everything, had been intentionally, systematically drugging her and bringing strangers into their home. The implications hit her like a physical blow. The memory gaps, the different pajamas, the bruises. Oh God, what had I done? What had I let them do? Somehow, she made it back to the bedroom. She climbed back into bed, shaking uncontrollably. She pulled the covers over herself, and she waited. An hour later, I came back upstairs. I checked on her again, and she played her part, pretending to be unconscious, while on the inside, she was screaming. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay there, wide awake, next to the monster she had married. And I, in my blissful ignorance, slept soundly, never knowing my world was about to be utterly destroyed. The next morning was one of the most surreal and repulsive experiences of my life, though at the time, I was completely oblivious. I woke up feeling like it was any other day. I stretched, glanced over at Chloe lying beside me, and felt a synthetic pang of affection. It was a conditioned response, a habit built from happier times. I had completely shed my nighttime persona, forgotten the squalid transactions that had taken place just hours before in our basement. I woke her up with a cup of coffee and a smile, as I always did. I kissed her forehead, asked how she slept, and she, the woman whose heart had just been pulverized, looked directly into my eyes. She later testified that when she looked into the eyes she thought she knew so well, she saw a complete stranger, a monster. But she let none of it show. She had to pretend everything was normal. She had to play the role of the drugged, compliant wife I expected her to be. I slept great, she lied, and I remember her hands shook slightly as she took the coffee mug. I chalked it up to her still being groggy. Thanks, honey, I smiled. The smile that once made her feel safe must have made her want to vomit. I went downstairs to make breakfast, completely unaware that the moment I was gone, she ran to the bathroom and threw up. She stood there, gripping the sink, staring at her pale, haunted face in the mirror, and wondering how she had been so blind. But she didn't wallow in shock. Some incredible strength had ignited within her. She knew what she had to do. She needed proof. She knew that if she went to the police with just her story, with just the suspicion that her husband was drugging her, they might not believe her. Without evidence, it was just her word against mine. And I was good at lying. So good I had been doing it for 7 months. That morning, while I was in the shower, she made her move. She slipped into my office and grabbed my laptop. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type. She tried to guess my password, our anniversary, my birthday, her birthday. None of them worked. I had changed it long ago, another precaution. The locked drawer mocked her from across the room, but she had no time or tools to break it open. She put the laptop back exactly where she'd found it and got ready for work. At school that day, she was a zombie. She taught her classes on autopilot, barely aware of what she was saying. During lunch, she sat in her empty classroom and cried. A colleague found her and asked if she was okay. She wanted so badly to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. How do you tell someone your husband is drugging you? That strangers are coming into your house in the middle of the night? It sounded insane, even in her own head. After school, instead of coming home, she drove to a Best Buy. She walked through the store in a daze until she found what she was looking for. Hidden cameras, tiny ones, the kind you could tuck into a bookshelf or hide in a plant. She bought 2 of them, paying with cash so there would be no credit card record for me to see. She sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just staring at the shopping bag on her passenger seat. This was it. This was the line she was crossing. Once she planted these cameras, once she collected this evidence, there was no going back. Her marriage would be over. Her life as she knew it would be over. But what choice did she have? She couldn't keep living like this, couldn't keep letting me drug her. She came home and she waited for my daily routine. At 5:30 p.m., I went for my run, like clockwork. The moment the door closed behind me, she moved like a spy in her own home. She planted 1 camera in our bedroom, hidden among the books on her side of the bed, angled toward the nightstand where I always placed her vitamins. She used her phone to test it, making sure it was working, making sure it had a clear view. Then she ran to the basement. Her heart was pounding as she descended those stairs. The space now felt sinister, like a crime scene she had yet to fully process. She frantically looked for a place to hide the second camera. There was an air vent on the far wall, and she managed to pry off the cover with a screwdriver from my own toolbox. She wedged the camera inside, angled it to cover as much of the basement as possible, and replaced the vent cover. She made it back upstairs just as she heard my key in the front door, sitting on the couch and pretending to grate papers. I walked in, sweaty from my run. I leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "Hey, baby, how was your day?" I asked. "Good," she managed to say. "How was your run?" "Great. I'm going to grab a shower." The moment I was in the bathroom and the water was running, she pulled out her phone and checked the camera feeds. Both were working perfectly, recording to a cloud account she'd set up with an email address I didn't know about. Everything was in place. Now, all she had to do was wait. Wait for me to walk right into her trap. And I, in my arrogance and blindness, had no idea. I still thought I was the one in control. I didn't know the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. I didn't know that the woman I thought I had completely subjugated was, in fact, preparing to take me down. Her performance was just beginning. That night, when I brought her the vitamins, I didn't realize I was stepping onto my own stage, with silent digital observers recording my every move. To me, it was just another Tuesday. To Chloe, it was the first night of her counter-offensive. It must have taken a level of self-control I can't even fathom. To face your destroyer, to accept the instrument of your torture from his hand, and to feign submission, it must have torn her apart inside. I held out the pills. Her hand, unlike that morning, was perfectly steady now. She had a purpose. She put them in her mouth and pretended to swallow. The moment I turned away, she tucked them under her tongue. When I came back to check, my sick, controlling habit, she obediently opened her mouth. I didn't look closely. I saw what I wanted to see, a compliant wife. "That's my good girl," I said. The memory of those words makes me want to put my fist through a wall. Loving words I had twisted into the language of a jailer. After I left the room, she spit the pills out and flushed them down the toilet. Then she got back in bed and began her fight. The fight against her own body. It was probably a psychological response, a phantom residue from months of being drugged. The drowsiness still came, however illusory. She had to dig her nails into her palms, keeping herself awake with the cold, simmering rage. And he came that night. Of course he did. At 2:15 a.m., the basement door creaked open. But this time, Chloe didn't follow. This time, she lay still in bed, eyes closed, heart racing, and let the cameras do their work. She lay there, awake in the darkness, while her husband conducted his unspeakable business right beneath her feet. I came back an hour later, checked on her one more time, and went to sleep beside her as if nothing had happened. She did this for 3 nights. 3 nights of pretending to take the pills. 3 nights of fighting to stay conscious. 3 nights of listening to me sneak around our own house while I thought she was drugged into oblivion. Her patience and bravery were extraordinary. She knew one night might not be enough. She needed a pattern. She needed irrefutable proof. On the 4th night, I didn't go to the basement. Maybe I had filled my orders for the week, I don't know. I just know that Chloe couldn't wait any longer. She had to know. She had to face the truth, no matter how horrific. The next morning, I handed her the perfect opportunity. I told her I was going to run some errands, maybe grab lunch with an old buddy from work. I'd be gone most of the day. The moment my car pulled out of the driveway, she grabbed her laptop and pulled up the camera footage. Later, in court, her lawyer described this moment. She said that Chloe thought she was prepared. She thought she knew what she was going to see. She thought nothing could shock her anymore after what she'd already discovered. She was wrong. So wrong. The bedroom camera showed exactly what she'd suspected. Me, bringing her the pills, watching her take them, checking on her afterward. But it was the metadata, the timestamps on the video files that killed her. The data showed this had been happening for 7 months. 7 months, not 6 like she thought. I had started drugging her even before the first symptoms became noticeable. And the camera showed other things too. It showed me, while she was unconscious, going through her phone, typing messages, deleting things. It showed me changing her clothes, posing her. She had to watch her husband move her limp body around like a lifeless doll. The violation of it, the absolute desecration of her trust, made her want to set the world on fire. But that was nothing compared to the basement footage. There, on her screen, she watched the man she had promised to love forever lead other men into their home. She watched me lead them downstairs to the basement, where I had set up another camera on a tripod. And then she understood. I wasn't just letting people into our house. I was charging them. The footage showed me accepting cash. It showed me showing them photos on my phone, clearly of her, based on their reactions. Money changing hands. The footage showed the men standing at the top of the basement stairs, looking up toward where she lay unconscious, and the looks on their faces made her want to vomit. The footage showed me showing them something on my laptop in the basement. They would laugh, they would nod, they would hand over more money. The camera couldn't see the laptop screen, but she could imagine. Pictures of her, videos of her. Content created while she was drugged, unconscious, unable to consent, unable to fight back, unable to even know it was happening. She sat there at her own kitchen table, watching this footage, and she couldn't breathe. The man she loved, the man she trusted with her life, had been trafficking her body. He had been creating content of her without her knowledge or consent and selling access to it for months. For 7 goddamn months, I had been violating her in ways she couldn't even fully comprehend. And she had no idea. She found the files on the cloud storage, hundreds of them, with dates going back 7 months. She couldn't bring herself to open them. She didn't want to see what I'd done, what I'd recorded. The fact that they existed was enough. The fact that her husband, the man who stood at an altar and promised to love and cherish her, had done this, was enough. She couldn't watch anymore. She slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, throwing up until there was nothing left. She collapsed on the bathroom floor, sobbing. How had this happened? How had she married a monster without knowing it? But then, the grief turned to rage. A white-hot, all-consuming rage that burned through the shock and horror. I had done this to her. I had violated her, used her, sold her while she slept. I had stolen 7 months of her life, stolen her sense of safety, stolen her ability to trust. And I was going to pay for it. If it was the last thing she did, she was going to make sure I paid for every single moment of what I had done. My world of lies wasn't just cracked. It had been blown to pieces. The collapse was swift and brutal. The rage gave Chloe a terrifying clarity. She was no longer a confused, paralyzed victim. She was a survivor on a mission. She knew she couldn't stay in that house a second longer. Their home, once a sanctuary, was now contaminated, a crime scene. With hands that still trembled, she packed a bag, clothes, toiletries, her important documents. But most importantly, she secured the evidence. She backed up all the camera footage to 3 different cloud services. She saved it to USB drives. She emailed it to herself at multiple addresses. She was not going to lose this. She was not going to give me any chance to get away with it. Then, she called Mia. "I need you," she said when Mia answered, her voice breaking. "Please, I need you right now." Mia didn't ask a single question. "I'm coming," she said instantly. "Where are you?" "I'm leaving my house. I can't be here." "Meet me at the coffee shop on Piedmont." "I'm already in my car." Chloe threw the bag in her trunk and drove away. She didn't leave a note. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out of that house of horrors and never looked back. Mia was at the coffee shop when she arrived. The moment she saw Chloe's face, she knew something terrible had happened. They found a corner table, and Chloe told her everything, every detail. The vitamins, the memory gaps, the locked drawer, the cameras, and what she had seen on the footage. She watched Mia's face cycle through shock, horror, rage, and finally, steely determination. "We're calling the police," Mia said, "right now. We're not waiting. We're not thinking about it. We're doing it right now." "What if they don't believe me?" Chloe asked, hating how small and weak her voice sounded. "Chloe, you have video evidence. You have dates, times, everything. They're going to believe you. But even if they didn't, we'd make them believe you. You are not protecting this monster. You are not going to let him get away with this." Mia was right, and Chloe knew it. But making that call was still one of the hardest things she'd ever done. They went to Mia's house. Chloe couldn't face walking into a police station. Mia called the non-emergency number and explained that her friend needed to report a serious crime. Within 30 minutes, 2 officers were at Mia's house. One of them was a woman, Detective Evelyn Reed. Chloe said she would never forget Detective Reed's face as she began her story. She didn't interrupt, didn't question, just let her talk. Then, Chloe showed them the footage on her laptop. Not all of it. She couldn't bear to watch it all again. But enough. Enough to show me drugging her. Enough to show men coming to our house. Enough to show money changing hands. Detective Reed's expression went from concerned to furious. "Ma'am," she said, "what your husband has done is a serious crime. Multiple serious crimes. We're going to need you to come to the station and give a formal statement. We're going to need all this evidence. And we're going to need to get you an emergency protective order." "Today?" Chloe asked. "We're going to try," she said. "This is an active threat to your safety. We need to move fast." They went to the station. Chloe sat in an interview room, giving her statement, while Detective Reed recorded everything. She asked questions Chloe hadn't even thought of, forcing her to walk through details she had tried to forget. The protective order was granted that afternoon. I was not allowed to contact her, to come near her. I knew nothing of this. I had my normal day, running errands, having lunch. I came home that evening, expecting to see Chloe. The house was empty. At first, I just thought she was running late, but as the hours passed, a deep unease started to creep in. I called her. It rang and rang. No answer. I called Mia. She didn't pick up. Panic began to set in. Had she found something out? It couldn't be. I had been so careful. She must just be out with friends. I tried to reassure myself, but the gnawing anxiety wouldn't go away. The storm hit the next morning. Around 8 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Not a normal knock. It was a hard, authoritative bang. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 uniformed officers and Detective Reed. My heart sank into my stomach. I opened the door. "Liam Spencer?" Detective Reed asked. "Yes?" "We have a warrant to search the premises." My world ended in that moment. They swarmed in. They went through every inch of my house. They knew exactly where to look. They went straight to my office and broke the lock on my desk drawer. They pulled out the hard drives. They seized my computers, my phone. I just stood there, numb, as my double life was ripped open for the world to see. Detective Reed called Chloe to let her know. They'd found everything. The hard drives full of images and videos of her, some dating back to before we were even married, before I started drugging her systematically. I'd been planning this, building up to it, maybe from the very beginning. They found the client lists, the cryptocurrency payment records, the correspondence with dozens of men. They found the vitamins I'd been giving her, and lab analysis later confirmed they contained rohypnol. Not vitamins at all, just poison wrapped in a lie. I was arrested at work that same afternoon. I was at a coffee shop, trying to work and pretend like nothing was happening. They walked in, called my name. I tried to resist. In a moment of sheer insanity, I tried to run. They tackled me to the ground, right there in front of everyone. Everyone who thought I was just a normal guy got to see me arrested for drugging and trafficking my own wife. I called her from jail. I don't know how I got her number. I wasn't supposed to have contact. But I called. I had to hear her voice. I had to try, one last time, to manipulate her. "Chloe," I said, trying to make my voice sound normal, like the Liam she fell in love with. "Baby, please. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything." And she laughed, a laugh that sounded unhinged. "Explain what, Liam? Explain how you drugged me for 7 months. Explain how you sold access to my body while I was unconscious. Explain which part exactly." "It wasn't like that," I said, my voice desperate. "I never let anyone touch you. I swear. It was just pictures, just videos of you sleeping, nothing else. I needed the money. We had debt." "We didn't have debt!" she screamed into the phone. "We were fine. You did this because you're sick. You did this because you're a predator and a monster." "Chloe, please." "I hope you rot," she said, and her voice was now ice cold. "I hope you spend every day for the rest of your miserable life thinking about what you did. I hope you never know peace. I hope the guilt destroys you." She hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to Chloe. Her curse became my prophecy. The legal process was a protracted nightmare, a public and humiliating dissection of my crimes. I had to sit there and listen as my most depraved actions were detailed under the cold, fluorescent lights of a courtroom. I had to face Chloe, but not the Chloe I knew. The woman who sat at the prosecutor's table was a stranger, someone forged in fire and shaped by my betrayal. Her strength was terrifying, and it was built on the ashes of the life I had burned to the ground. She had to testify before a grand jury. I wasn't there, but I read the transcripts. I read how she, in a steady voice, recounted every detail. The vitamins, the memory loss, the feeling of violation, the moment she watched the tapes. I read that some of the jurors wept, that one man had to step out of the room because he was so overcome. They indicted me on multiple counts: administering drugs without consent, sexual exploitation, distribution of intimate images without consent, and trafficking-related offenses. The prosecutor said it was one of the strongest cases she'd ever seen. All because of her. Because of her intelligence to gather the evidence before confronting me. My court-appointed lawyer tried. He tried every trick in the book. He tried to discredit Chloe, arguing she was an unreliable witness because of the memory issues, the very issues I had caused. It was the height of audacity. He tried to argue that we had some sort of arrangement, that she had consented to being filmed. But the prosecution tore that argument to shreds. They had the video of me drugging her. They had the client lists, the payments. And then they found some of my clients. They offered them immunity in exchange for their testimony. 3 of them took the deal. 3 strange men walked up to the witness stand and testified that they had paid me for access to photos and videos of my wife. I'll never forget the moment one of them was asked by the prosecutor why he'd done it. "He made it seem harmless," the man said. "Like she knew. Like she was okay with it. He said she was into it, that it was part of their marriage dynamic." The prosecutor then showed him the footage of me drugging Chloe. The man started crying on the stand. "I didn't know," he kept saying. "I swear I didn't know he was drugging her." But he knew. On some level, they all knew. You don't pay money for secret photos of someone's unconscious wife if you think everything is above board. You don't sneak into someone's house at 2 a.m. for innocent reasons. They knew, and they participated. And I was the one who opened the door for them. The trial took 8 months. 8 months of her life consumed by the nightmare I created, having to relive it over and over again. 8 months of her living with Mia because she couldn't be alone, couldn't sleep without checking every lock 3 times. 8 months of therapy, trying to process the violation, the betrayal, the complete destruction of everything she thought her life was. Her therapist, Dr. Williams, became her lifeline. She helped her understand but what happened wasn't her fault, that she couldn't have known, couldn't have prevented it. She helped her work through the crushing guilt, the feeling that she should have seen the signs, should have questioned the vitamins, should have been smarter or more careful. Predators are good at what they do, Dr. Williams told her. They are skilled manipulators. Liam didn't choose you because you were weak or stupid. He chose you because you were kind and trusting and loving. Those are good qualities. He weaponized them, but that doesn't make them bad. When the trial finally went to jury, Chloe had to testify. She had to sit on that stand for 3 days while my lawyer tried to paint her as unstable, vindictive, and unreliable. He suggested she'd made the whole thing up because she was angry about something else in our marriage. But then, the prosecution brought out the evidence. The hard drives from my locked drawer, the client testimonies, the lab results on the vitamins, the cryptocurrency payment records, the testimony from a medical expert on the effects of Rohypnol. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours that felt like 6 years to me. I sat there, in my orange jumpsuit, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom. I knew there was no escape. They came back with a verdict. Guilty, the foreman said, repeating it for every single count. Guilty, guilty, guilty. I saw Chloe collapse. She fell into Mia's arms and sobbed. They were tears of relief, of validation. They believed her. The world believed her. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks later. She gave a victim impact statement. She stood in front of that courtroom and looked me directly in the eye for the first time since my arrest. And she told me exactly what I had done to her. "You took 7 months of my life," she said, and her voice did not shake. "You took my sense of safety, my ability to trust, my peace of mind. You turned my own body into a crime scene. You made me afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to exist in my own home. You looked me in the eye every single day and lied to me while you violated me in the worst possible way. You made me doubt my own sanity, my own memory, my own worth." I was crying, tears of shame, regret, and self-pity. But I knew they meant nothing to her. "I will never trust the way I used to," she continued. "I will never feel completely safe the way I used to. You took that from me, and I can never get it back. But here's what you didn't take. You didn't take my strength. You didn't take my resilience. You didn't take my determination to survive this and build a life that's better than anything I had with you. You thought you could break me, control me, use me up and throw me away. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And you're the one in chains." The judge sentenced me to 18 years in prison. 18 years, with no possibility of parole for at least 12. I also have to register as a sex offender for the rest of my life. When I get out, if I make it out, I'll be in my 50s, and everyone will know what I am. The sentence, as heavy as it is, can never compare to the life sentence of trauma I gave her. But it was justice, the closest our system could get to it, and I deserved every second of it, and more. After the criminal trial, the remaining pieces of the life we built together were systematically dismantled. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. It was a cold, brutal procedure. I had no ground to stand on. I sat in a room, speaking to my lawyer on a prison phone, while Chloe, through her representatives, took everything. She deserved it all. She got the house, but I knew she would never live there again. She sold it immediately. I can only imagine what it felt like for her. Every wall, every corner, haunted by the memory of my betrayal. She got my retirement accounts, my savings. My lawyer tried to fight it, but it's hard to argue for a favorable divorce settlement when your client is a convicted sex offender who drugged and trafficked his wife. I heard she donated most of the money to organizations that support survivors of sexual violence. That act, more than anything, showed who she was and who I was. Even in her pain, she thought of helping others, while I, in my selfishness, had only ever thought of myself. She kept enough to pay off her student loans and start fresh. She couldn't stay in Atlanta. The city had become a map of my lies. Our favorite restaurant, where I'd taken her on dates while planning my violations. The grocery store where we shopped together. The gym where I pretended to be a devoted husband. Every place was poisoned by me. So she moved. I learned this through trickles of information from my lawyer. She moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. A new city, a new teaching job at a different high school, a new life. Mia helped her move. She wasn't alone, and that thought was both a small, selfish comfort and a bitter reminder that I had driven her into the arms of others for the safety I was supposed to provide. My first years in prison were a living hell, but I knew it was nothing compared to the hell she was living through. I was fighting for survival in a world of violence and despair, but she was fighting demons in her own mind. I heard it was hard, that she would wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, convinced someone was in her apartment. She installed security cameras, ones that she controlled. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had used technology to violate her, and now she had to use it to feel safe again. She couldn't take any medication without having a panic attack. The sight of pills made her physically ill. I had weaponized the most basic act of care, and now she couldn't trust anything she put in her body. She continued therapy, twice a week. Her new therapist, Dr. Richardson, helped her work on the PTSD, the hypervigilance, and rebuilding her ability to trust. Meanwhile, I sat in my cell, with nothing but time. I reread the transcripts, the reports, trying to understand how I had gone so wrong. It wasn't one single moment. It was 1,000 tiny, cowardly choices. The first lie about my finances. The first thought of taking her picture. The first pill I gave her. Each step took me further from the shore of decency, until I was completely lost in the ocean of my own depravity. About a year after she moved to Charlotte, I heard she met someone. His name is Marcus. He's a guidance counselor at her school. The thought of Chloe with another man would have once sent me into a jealous rage. Now, it just brought a hollow, aching sadness. It was a reminder of all that I had lost, all that I had thrown away. She told him everything on their third date. I can imagine her terror as she revealed her scars, convinced he would run. But he didn't. He said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. I can't imagine how hard it was to survive what you went through. But Chloe, you did survive it. You got yourself out. You got justice, and you're still here. That takes incredible strength." His words were everything mine never were. They were genuine, respectful, and free of manipulation. He gave her the space, the patience, and the safety to heal at her own pace. They are still together. He is helping her learn to trust again. He is helping her see that not all men are monsters. He is the antidote to the poison I injected into her life. And in my loneliest moments in this cell, I have to admit a bitter truth. He is a better man than I ever was. He is the man Chloe deserved all along. I tried to appeal my sentence. A new lawyer argued that 18 years was too harsh. The appeal was denied. Even in this world of criminals, what I did is considered beyond the pale. I am a monster among monsters. Some of my clients were prosecuted too. The 3 who testified got reduced sentences, but they still served time. The others, the ones the police could identify from my records, were charged with various crimes. She had to testify at some of those trials, telling her story over and over again. Each time must have been re-traumatizing. But she did it. She made sure that everyone involved in her victimization faced the consequences. Her new life is being built, brick by brick, on the ruined foundation I left behind. And I am here, serving my time, haunted by the face of the woman I loved and destroyed, and wondering if there can ever be redemption for a soul as lost as mine. It has been 2 years now since that fateful night, the night Chloe pretended to take the pills and discovered the truth. 2 years since her world imploded and she had to rebuild herself from scratch. For me, it has been 2 years of an 18-year sentence. Time moves differently in here. It is both eternal and static. Each day is a carbon copy of the last, distinguished only by the ever-increasing weight of my regret. I still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat, and for a disoriented moment, I think I'm at home in Atlanta, in my bed next to Chloe. I can almost smell her shampoo. But then reality crashes in. The smell of prison mildew, the snores of my cellmate, the cold of the thin mattress. And I remember it all. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. I did it. I caused it. And she survived it, not because of me, but in spite of me. I know she's still teaching. I know she loves her students in Charlotte as much as she loved the ones in Atlanta. That job has given her a purpose, something to focus on besides her own trauma. She's still in therapy, and probably will be for years to come. The wounds I inflicted are not the kind that heal quickly. I know that she is sharing her story. It started with that video, and now, I imagine, in other ways. She has turned her nightmare into a warning. She lists the signs she wishes she'd known to look for, and when I heard them read back in court, each one was a knife twisting inside me, because I was the author of all of them. If your partner is insistent about you taking medication or supplements they provide, question it. I did that. If you're experiencing memory gaps or blackouts you can't explain, take it seriously. I caused that. If you're waking up feeling drugged, in different clothes, with unexplained bruises, do not dismiss it. I was the reason for that. If your partner is overly controlling about your sleep schedule, about what you eat or drink, about your daily routines, pay attention. Control is often the first sign of abuse. I was a controller. If your phone has messages you don't remember sending, if your things are moved or changed, someone is accessing your life without your permission. I was that intruder. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Chloe spent months dismissing her instincts, and it almost cost her everything. I share these warnings now, not because I seek forgiveness. I know I am beyond that. But because if a confession from the monster's own mouth can help one person recognize the danger they're in, then maybe, just maybe, my worthless existence won't be a complete waste. Understand this. What I did is not rare. It hides in the shadows, in normal-looking houses, behind closed doors. Intimate partner abuse, drugging, image-based sexual abuse. These things happen more often than people want to believe. We want to think the people we love would never hurt us. But sometimes, they do. Sometimes the monster isn't a stranger in a dark alley. Sometimes it's the person you promised your life to. And if you are someone who has experienced something like this, please know, it is not your fault. I spent 7 months manipulating Chloe's reality, making her believe the problem was her, that she was forgetful, anxious, weak. It was the biggest lie of all. Predators like me, we're good at what we do. We are skilled at manipulation, at hiding our true nature. You couldn't have known. You couldn't have prevented it. It is not your fault. You deserve to heal. You deserve to rebuild your life. I am Liam. I'm 37 years old, and I am an inmate in a medium-security prison in Georgia. I lost my wife, my freedom, and my soul. I am haunted by what I did, and I deserve to be. But Chloe, she is 36 years old. She is a high school English teacher in Charlotte, North Carolina. She has a partner who respects her, friends who support her, a therapist who helps her navigate the hard days. She is healing, slowly but surely, from the worst violation I can imagine. The violation I inflicted upon her. She is living proof that if someone can survive what I did to her, if she can claw her way back from that pit of trauma, violation and betrayal, then you can survive whatever you are facing too. I took 7 months of her life. I took her sense of safety, her ability to trust easily. But I did not take her strength. I did not take her resilience. I did not take her determination to not just survive, but to thrive, in spite of what I did. She is still here. She is still standing. And so can you. If you have made it this far in my story, this confession, thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness to the ugly truth of what one human being can do to another. Please, share this video if you think it might help someone. Hit that subscribe button if you want to follow my journey of atonement, wherever it may lead. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and if my story has resonated with you in any way. Stay safe out there. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself and the people you love. And remember, you deserve safety, respect, and autonomy over your own body. Always. No exceptions. This is Liam signing off. And to anyone out there who is living through a nightmare like the one I created, I am sorry. From the bottom of my rotted-out soul, I am so sorry. You are not alone. You are believed. You are valued. And you can make it through this. I promise.